mission is to preserve and enhance the architectural and cultural landscape heritage of Saratoga Springs. And we do that through educational program, like tonight, our summer strolls that take place every Sunday from now through the end of October, as well as providing technical assistance to building property owners, advocating for best preservation practices within the city, and then as well as undertaking restoration projects. Our most notable recent project is 65 Philo Street, which was on our endangered list for more than 20 years, and we were successful to purchase that 3 years ago, and we undertook a restoration, and tomorrow at 5:30 to 7:30 in the sweltering heat, unfortunately, we don't get to plan the weather. We are going to have a block party with music, food, and drink, and we encourage you to come out and celebrate our success not only at 65 Philo Street, but also to celebrate the owners who purchased and restored and moved into 69 Philo Street. So if you have not had an opportunity, I hope you will join us tomorrow. Tonight's program is in partnership with the City of Saratoga Springs. It's through a certified local government grant program, which is funded through New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. And it's with that we are doing this series. And we've had 2 previous programs, a lunch and learn, sort of the basics of preservation, and then we did defensible decisions, and then we have tonight's program about windows, which is near and dear to my heart as somebody who has been in my role and in preservation, which is hard to believe, almost 30 years. Yes, I started very young. I just think there's such a character-defining feature of buildings, and there's so much more to preserving them beyond aesthetics, but I'm going to let our presenters speak to all the wonderful things about them and how to do that. But we do have a future program on July 22nd. It's a lunch and learn, and it's going to be about standards and guidelines for design review, and that will be through the National Association of Preservation Commissions. So with that, I'm happy to introduce Steve Jordan and Kurt Riegel. Steve Jordan has dedicated 40 years to old house repair and restoration, specializing in window restoration for the past 20. A graduate of Cornell University's Historic Preservation Program, which I'm alum, all but thesis. Ooh, Tomlin doesn't like that. He served as a contributing editor for Old House Journal for 17 years. Previously, he was the rehab advisor for the Landmark Society of Western New York and an architectural conservator for Barrow Architecture. He authored the award-winning Rehab for Rochester and co-authored Painting Kitchens. He has worked on numerous significant historic sites, including the Susan B. Anthony House, the Schuyler Mansion, and to highlight enduring qualities of historic windows over modern replacements. And he's written several books. Steve's actually known as the window expert, guru, everything in the preservation field. He's written the Window Sash Bible, Window Glazing, Storm Windows, and a Comprehensive Guide, which some of his books are here for purchase. Kurt Riegel has dedicated his life to historic preservation, restoration, and local history with a master's degree in historic preservation from SUNY Buffalo. He's an expert in these fields. His interest is he also has an interest in historic gravestones, and that's where his interest began early, and he learned proper repair and cleaning techniques from leading experts. Today, Kurt is recognized as one of the nation's foremost experts in historic homes and grave monuments. He also mastered the art of restoring historic window sash, a skill now rare in today's disposable culture. He's among a few Americans capable of this work. With that, I'm going to turn it over to these two and take it away.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple of things. The first thing is there's no way we can do this in an hour.
Right.
What we normally do takes 8 hours, and then we can't do it. I'm a slow-talking Southerner, so I'm going to try to speed it up. All right. It's great. We're happy in Saratoga Springs tonight. Saratoga Springs is one of those places that you go because of the 19th century character of the small city. You know, it's kind of like the Riegel Springs, Arkansas, Manitoba Springs, Colorado. It's just one of these places that people go to because it's been preserved. All right, and windows, or saving your old windows, is just a piece and part of historic preservation because it's all about accretion. Okay, if you see your neighbor take care of their older home or their old building, it's incestuous, and the next person does it, and the next person does it, and so see, it's a movie. It also goes the other way. You knock off your porch. Well, we took off the porch. We might as well put vinyl siding on now. Then the neighbors see it, and again, it's accretion, and it goes that way. And so, saving your old windows is very important to us, and we'll try to do this as efficiently as we can. But there is one thing we'll talk about. We can talk all night, but we want to hear what you want to know also. I think we're going to talk about, first we're going to start this, why we save old windows. I'm going to be passing things around.
So windows are extremely significant to our entire built environment. Not just because of the window, because of the entire building by itself. Without that window, you lose the eyes of our buildings. And the windows are significant because they tell us so much about the building, and they tell us the style of the building and the age of the building, if the original place. And by removing that window, you're removing the style, the age, the character, the everything of that building, the essence of that building. So they are huge character-defining features that we look for in a historic building. As far as aesthetics, after going back to style, windows have changed quite a bit over the years from the very beginning. Windows started out in the 18th century and 17th century, much different than they are in the 19th century and much different in the 20th century. And because of that style, you get smaller panes to larger panes and other various features that change. Those things all create the aesthetic that you can kind of date the window, date the building sometimes based on that. Those simple, minute aesthetics.
Yeah, the windows are a product of their time, okay? So not only do they represent the technology available when they were put into your house, they represent the technology of the time. And so there's the style of the windows, whether it's a Gothic or a lancet head window, or a pointed top window, round top window, whether it's 1/1, 2/2, these all mean things. And they date the house, okay? Also, there's the wavy glass. And that's a technological issue. Early on, you could only make glass in small panes, okay? Because it was made by turning molten glass into a big round thin disc, and so it cut the little panes out of that disc. And so our earliest window panes are very small. And then as the 19th century moves on into the 20th century, they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. They got too big, actually. We're going to talk about durability. I'll say something, then we'll let Kurt go with it. First of all, it's old growth wood. If you don't know about old growth wood, one of the reasons our forefathers were so excited to come to America was the forest full of tall limbless trees. And the trees are limbless because in a forest they're all fighting for the sunlight up above where the canopy is. And so you might have 30, 40, 50 feet of no knots in that wood, which makes it very strong. And then as the tree gets older and older and older, hardwood, old growth's 500, softwoods, that could be 1,000 years old. That wood gets more rock resistance, insect resistant, and the growth rings get tighter and tighter and tighter. It becomes very strong. And when cut certain ways, it's not only durable, but stable. Okay? So I'm going to pass a couple things around to you. This is just an example of juvenile growth and old growth wood side by side. Juvenile growth is like a stud we see today. And then a couple of other pieces of wood here. The growth rings are so tight, you can't count them. So they probably came out of a tree 1,000 or more years old.
Going back to that durability, if you notice, you will find a lot of windows in the 19th century that are not maintained. They're missing their paint, they're missing their glazing, they're falling apart. But the wood is still there. The wood is not rotting. If you find pine that you've installed on your house 5 years ago, sometimes that 5-year-old pine that's new growth is all rotted and falling apart.
Besides the high quality wood, what you don't get from modern window is the joinery that we used to see in windows. You still have windows made this way. I want to emphasize that. But what we have is mortise and tenon joinery, which this was put together so precisely that they didn't use glue. They didn't really have an exterior glue. They didn't need it to join it with so that you could take one of those up and the other end. And you can see it around. This, by the way, is a bridle joint. That one's a mortise and tenon joint. Here's another mortise and tenon. What's the next thing? Oh, ease of repair. So if you buy a modern window, the simplest thing that will happen is glass will be the simplest error problem is glass will be broken. It's very difficult to replace glass on a modern window. Some would say it's impossible. Some people will do it, but they're really not. The glass is not made to replace. You're supposed to replace the whole sash if the company's still in business.
Or if they support that model.
What?
Or maybe they don't support that model.
Yeah, well, that's true. And most hardware stores, carpenters, handymen, handywomen have the sexes, right? Can replace a piece of glass in winter. My mother would replace a piece of glass in winter. And people seem to think it's hard work now. It's really not. So we can talk about sash cords.
Also, another problem with newer windows, vinyl windows, replacement windows, is the glass fogs. So that gasket will actually break, the seal will break, and the gas will get in there, and then you'll not be able to look at the window anymore. Your glass is completely covered and fogged over with a haze. So you can't fix that. Once it fails and falls apart, you have to replace the entire window unit all over again, which is a constant. Every 20 years, replace your windows over and over and over and over through the life of your entire home.
This is what he's talking about. There's an organic seal between these two pieces of glass, okay? So once that falls up, it can't be fixed. There are manufacturers in the United States today that are making a new version of this where that won't happen. But boy, it's expensive. It's very energy efficient. It's expensive. And by the way, Anderson and Pell both had a double pane window in the late 40s and all the way through the 50s into the 60s. It wouldn't fog up, but it was such an expensive process that it wouldn't make it.
Another thing about windows is, so old windows are made to be functional and repairable. So old windows, if they fail, which everything in life does fail, you're able to then repair them. If your sash cords break, you can go in there and replace your sash cords to make them function again. As Steve said earlier, if the glass breaks, you can replace the glass. If the wood starts to rot, you can do a Dutchman or epoxy repair, and you can repair that wood. Anything that you have to get done to that window can be repaired. Nothing is beyond.
So I pass the sash cord around. Each one is labeled, and you'll notice that they're labeled like number 6, 7, number 8, 9, number 10, and that's because sash cord was sold in 30 seconds of an inch. So if you see number 8, which is our most common, that's number 8. That's 8 30-seconds of an inch. It's unlikely you'll go to the Ace hardware store, definitely not Home Depot or Lowe's, and buy quality cord. So one of the biggest complaints that we hear is, well, the sash cord didn't last, it broke in 5 years. Well, that's because this is nothing against the hardware store, okay? They're doing the best they can to support your local hardware store. But if you sell a sash cord and 100 feet is $7.95, and that cord is $29.95 for the same length, which one are you going to buy? So that's why your hardware store doesn't sell good sash cord. Okay? No one will buy it. And then every now and then, someone will say to me when I'm doing an event, isn't nylon cord a lot stronger? Oh boy, it is. It's a whole lot stronger. Okay? But when the sunlight shines on it, it explodes. Okay? And that's why we use cotton cord.
Also, nylon will stretch over time. And so because of that stretch, sometimes the bottom of your weight will hit the bottom of your weight pocket. And a cotton or a hemp cord will not stretch, so your weight will not get to the bottom of the pocket. Okay.
I've seen hemp cord still hanging after 125 years. We're only now beginning to see hemp cord again. You know, hemp was the main cord used in sailing ships. It was really strong. It was made of it.
I find tons of hemp cord, which is still in beautiful shape from 1860s, 1870s.
Performance. This is a big deal. We can talk about this all day. And that's, so people say to us, well, my windows are inefficient. And I should also say, my windows are worn out. And it's not the window's fault. It's not the window's fault that the homeowner didn't glaze them, didn't paint them, didn't take care of them for 100 years. Okay? It's not. Okay? The thing is, if they had been maintained appropriately, a good wooden window, well, I've worked on them 200 years old, and you've worked on them older than that, I think.
I worked on the 1750s.
Yeah, so, you know, they can last indefinitely. In that period of time, there would have been 10 campaigns to replace the things, but about efficiency, there are multiple studies. This is not hearsay. We actually did one at Pine Mountain a few years ago. And you know what a blower door test is for energy efficiency? That's when you put a fan at the door and close off the other door, and it's sucking out, which means it's sucking air in all the window cracks. Well, all the cracks, the whole house, okay? And then we tested the efficiency using different types of weather stripping and storm windows. The government's done this too. Oak Ridge has put out pamphlets about energy efficiency. So at Oak Ridge, they say the biggest bang for your buck, if you have an old window, is a storm window. Okay? But there are various ways to weather seal an old window that are longer lasting and just as good as a new window. So to make that short, you can meet the energy code on an old window. It's possible. I do this, it doesn't help. So I'll talk more about it.
I don't weather strip. I use firm windows. I don't weather strip for various reasons.
Put this down. Pass this around. If you've got an old house that had weather stripping from about I'm going to say about 1885 to 1950, it frequently had this zinc style. The rails had groove and ground that zinc. Okay. Very, very efficient. Kind of finicky when it gets old, but it's efficient. Okay. And then one I use a lot is a bronze V. There's a V you see on there. So that's a compression weather strip. All right. That's another. There's a lot more different ways to do it. We tend to mix and match different kinds of weather strip. And then here's a little simple tip. You may have sash stops that are nailed on, or you may have sash stops that are screwed on. And they make a type of adjustable sash stop. And that screw goes into a hole that's not round. It goes into an oval hole, okay? And this goes way back into the 19th century, the first half of the 20th century. And it's frustrating. I usually see the oval go the wrong way. The oval's got to go horizontally, okay? Therefore, in the winter, I can loosen the screw, push the stop over so the window is so tight it won't open. It also doesn't let air in. And then in the summer, I can loosen the screws, pull it over a little. It's only going to pull over 16 to 8, okay? Pull it over, and I can throw the window up with my finger. That's the wonderful thing about this type of stop adjuster. What's the problem with that? First guy comes along, the paintbrush is going to ruin it. Okay? That's the problem. All right? Yeah.
Another thing to point out, speaking of that, is one of the reasons why old windows today have such a bad reputation is because of people not knowing how to maintain and doing bad maintenance. And most of my work in restoration of windows, and Steve also, most of our work is just redoing bad painters' work. I mean, we spend hours and hours and hours cutting and removing painted up jambs and painted windows and stripping layers and layers of paint, which these windows would function if they were not painted. The only thing stopping them from functioning is bad paint. So with the invention of vinyl windows, also came the end of people knowing how to do maintenance. And now it's been several generations of carpenters, so we're so far away from people having that basic knowledge that now to even begin to try to tell people about it, it's foreign language to them about how to paint a window and where to paint a window and what part not to paint, what part to paint.
He's talking about how painters ruin windows. I'm going to pass these around. So the meeting rail is one of the areas that leaks the most. Okay, it's a problem. This is in the center. Sash plug, meet in the middle. And painters will let paint drip between those rails, and it gets thicker and thicker, and then they can close in more, and then you have a huge area. Okay? So you may think, well, today we think the lock is to keep people out. The lock was for energy efficiency, not really for security as much. So here's two meeting rails that have been cleaned up. As I pass around, you'll see that they pull together tightly. Okay. Here's two meeting rails with zinc weather stripping. Okay, you can look at that. That's a topic that Kurt and I could scream about all day long. This is kind of a problem here. Here's another way that we weather strip windows with the silicone ball that the meeting rail, and look at that. There we go. And here's a meeting rail with every option. Well, almost every option. Every weather seal on a meeting rail. Like I said, the meeting rail is different. Well, we're just kind of going through a list of why keep your old windows. And there's a multi-billion-dollar business out there called replacement window. If the Anderson or Riegel people have been to your house, can't get them out the door. Okay, they have billions of dollars to spend to sell new windows. Generally hyped 40% energy savings. It's not in their interest to say, why don't we look in your attic first and see if there's enough insulation and that kind of thing. But the window restoration people don't have anything to hide. Our materials are commonly available. It's just labor. Okay? It's labor and love. Right? So it's a little difficult for us to to compete with that hype. We're trying to teach new people to go into the trades. We have classes going on in different parts of the country. We had one several weeks paid in Rochester this fall. They're happening all over the country, but it's kind of unknown, so we're trying to spread the word.
To piggyback off of that hype issue, the other thing is modern windows, crappy windows. The entire product is the price. So you're buying a window, all of that money is going into that product. When you're restoring your window, the money is going into a laborer or a trade person's pocket. And so they get the benefit as opposed to the product getting the benefit.
One of our last notes on this piece of paper is return on your investment. And this is important. If I don't make this clear, tell me I didn't, okay? But, in my former jobs, I would frequently be asked by City Hall to come down and sit across the table with a replacement window person and a homeowner, and I have to battle it out, right? In this preservation district or adjacent to the preservation district. And I learned quickly as a young naive man that I don't have the numbers sitting at the table across from the window guy to beat him. I don't have the numbers. His windows new, quotes, new, are more efficient than an old window. Stop. Okay? So he has numbers, but what do they really mean? Okay? And so, in terms of return on your investment, what we've learned through tests at Purdue University, Department of Energy, and a lot of other energy programs, Minnesota's running these tests. What we've learned is they beat us with the numbers. What do the numbers really mean? What the numbers really mean is you might save $1 a year, $2 a year by buying a new window. And if you think about that, then the new window will not pay for itself in energy savings during the life of the window. So what is the life of the window? Well, on a crummy window, a cheap window, it's 5 to 10 years. On a better window, it's 10 to 20 years. On the top of the line window, maybe 30 years. And what windows? Vinyl windows. The problem with vinyl windows, besides the balance is great, is that sunshine embrittles vinyl. The problem with wood windows is that they tend to rot, and we especially have a problem in our climate. Okay. One thing for sure, we ran out of old growth wood by 1900. That's the reason we have the Adirondacks. Teddy Roosevelt saw what was happening up there, and so he made it a park. And we lost our old growth wood, and suddenly what old growth wood was left was too expensive for manufacturers to use to make windows and door trim and doors. And so what we will see, I don't know, Kurt works on windows older than the ones I work on. What I will see stamped on the side of the window is contains a toxic preservative. Okay? And so they started using preservatives because the old growth wood was gone, and boy did they work. Okay? I don't know what the early ones were, but in 1937 or so, 36, they discovered penta. Any of you old enough to remember penta? Pentachlorophenol? Okay? Well, I used it as a painter. It was horrible. It was horrible. But they used it all the way into the 1980s. And in the 1980s, the government figured out it was causing cancer clusters all over the United States where it was used. Okay? And so they abruptly took it off the market. Every new window since is rotting. They're still rotting. And one of the problems with rotting windows in our climate is when we put a clad surface on the outside, vinyl or aluminum, and we have this difference in winter temperature where we have a warm interior at say 70 degrees and a cold exterior at say 15 degrees. And that moist, warm air is going to get out any way it can. Eventually it gets out and it gets caught between the cladding and the wood of the new window. And the wood of the new window is frequently finger jointed. And I'm not going to go into that, but that's pretty bad. And so 15 years, 20 years, Mrs. Jones rolls out the window and the whole assembly just falls out on the ground. Now, you may think that's unusual, but I see it, my friends see it all the time because we're in the window business. So then it's time for them to replace all their windows. But you got to question the hype, because if you're the kind of person that loves your windows, you want to keep them, and you restore them, then they should last 100 years minimum. 200 is common. Okay. We got other pieces and parts and things to show you, but I thought he and I can talk about what a typical repair and restoration is, okay? I don't think Kurt does a whole lot of what people in the rest of the country call tune-ups, do you? Do you do tune-up? You want to tell them what you do? Yeah.
So a tune-up is when you're doing nautical restoration. So a tune-up would be, you're coming to a building, you're going to a window, and that window is painted shut, it's not functional, broken ropes, those kind of issues. So a tune-up would be to make it functional again, get rid of all the paint on the jams, which is all built up on the side of jam here. So the side that the window rolls on, slides up and down, that gets gummed with a lot of paint. So we remove that paint, remove all the bird edges of paint on the actual window sash, and that makes a lot of the friction go away so that your windows start to open and close again. Another thing we do for tune-ups is broken glass. And if you have your glazing that's starting to fall out, but it's not fully falling out, then you don't have to do a full restore. You could just simply get the loose glazing out, all the loose paint. You can spot putty with putty, the loose spot. And then you can spot prime and then paint the entire window sash. So that's a lot more ease. It has a lot more ease for homeowners. Most homeowners don't want to tackle a full restoration of their windows, because that can take time and tools and equipment. And that most homeowners don't want to actually acquire all of that.
Yeah, that's right. Typical tune-ups, tying sash cords and unsticking the windows. Okay. Sometimes in my area, weather stripping. We also make repairs, and we make wood repairs typically two ways. Okay. We make Dutchman repairs, and a Dutchman repair is an in-kind repair where there's a ding, there's a dent, there's a piece of wood missing, and you put a piece back. Okay. The other one we do is use epoxy. So here is a Dutchman repair. Here's one. It shows it in progress, and after it's done, you can look at that. In epoxy repairs, I realized this piece of wood to 9 out of 10 people would look rotten. The replacement window guys will tell you for sure, but it's of a quality that we have to pay a lot of money for today. It's not commonly available, and that wood, if you probe it with a screwdriver, is very sound and good. So sometimes we make repairs like this with epoxies. Now, I'm not talking about Bondo, it's not wood filler, it's two-component epoxy. The boat repair people have been using it for 50 years. It's expensive. You use epoxy.
I use West System, which is actually formulated for the boat world.
Yeah, that's
marine epoxy. And I use Avatron wood epoxy, liquid wood.
Yeah, okay. Want to talk about paint, Kurt?
Sure.
Anybody have paint questions? Yes. Yeah. It's not the paint that ruins the windows, it's the sloppy application of paint. And you're talking to a painter who has ruined a lot of windows. Yeah. Well, your window, excuse me guys, you all have this. Did you pick one up? You make cool. Where the pieces abut the stops, where the sashes abut the stops, they slide, okay? And your painter will just load his brush or her brush up with paint, okay? And flood that joint between the stop and the sash. And when they do that, you're getting a tailgate warranty, I suppose, because by the end of the day, the window's stuck, okay? And you have to excuse me for this. I'm going to rant a little bit, all right? Well, what you have to do is you have to feather the sash into the stop, and the stop has to be feathered into the sash. The problem with that is it will take another coat, and the painter doesn't want to put another coat on. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, because I was a painter, and I started out when oil paint was all we used. God, am I a believer in oil paint. And New York is taking it away from us. Okay? And so I will tell you, in case I forget this, I've just learned there was a waiver in the New York State VOC law that says if you go in and sign paperwork, you can get the old-fashioned oil primers for certified preservation work. Everybody I know is driving out of state to buy their oil primer now. It's not illegal to buy it out of state and bring it in. It's just illegal to sell it. Okay? And so we all do that. And if you go out of state, we call everybody we know and do you want a case of paint? It's that kind of thing, okay? But oil primer is, I can't tell you how much superior to the acrylic primers. Oil products always penetrate the wood better. And here's an example. When wood is soft and punky, which this was, I sand off the surface, okay, to a bright substrate. That's a technical term. And then instead of putting a primer on it first, sometimes we put linseed oil and turpentine, okay, or penetrol and mineral spirits. Same thought. You see that? You see that OG or that black line in the middle of that board? The linseed oil penetrated that deep, okay? And so it consolidated the wood. Now, if you put an oil primer on there, you have a great base, you know, to go with your top coats of paint. Oil primer doesn't penetrate like that, but it sure penetrates better than a quick drying acrylic primer.
You want to use boiled linseed. The other stuff will take forever to dry, it won't dry.
Tongue oil?
It's different.
No, they're different.
Tongue oil is different than linseed oil.
Tongue oil is different. Tongue oil is a higher quality oil than linseed. Okay. Originally, boiled linseed oil was really boiled. Okay. It's still labeled that, but it's not. It's not.
Tongue oil comes from China, but linseed oil comes from the flax plant, which you can grow here in the States.
That's right. And turpentine that you buy at the hardware store now for $20 a gallon is not real turpentine. Okay. Too bad. Doesn't even smell like it. Doesn't even smell like it. Real turpentine was important, especially for naval stores, okay? So they cut slits in the pine trees, they caught the pitch, then they processed the pitch, they steamed it and made the turpentine out of the sap, okay, the pitch. The stuff they're selling for turpentine now is pine sawdust, which is steamed, and it's not the same, okay? A true gallon of turpentine today costs, I think, $150 a gallon, doesn't it? Yeah, because there's only 2 places in the United States that make it anymore. We love the old stuff. What? It's part of the federal
VOC compliant for your
VOC rules, volatile organic compound rules, so it's all about global warming. And
So that's quite good. And then my other question is glazing. Has glaze changed?
Yes. Putty.
Glaze.
So putty has changed over the years. Traditionally, putty was two products. It was linseed oil and whiting powder. You'd mix it together into a putty consistency and you tool it into your window sash. Today, most of the modern putty you're going to buy at the local hardware store is not that. It's synthetic.
I'll correct it. In the 19th century, it was whiting, linseed oil, and lead. Okay? And lead.
So the stuff you buy today at the hardware store, typically it's going to be DAP, and DAP is not the best stuff, and it's synthetic. But most window restoration people are using Scirocco, which is still linseed based, with some additives.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that name? Using what for what?
Scirocco Type M is what most people with front windows are using today.
Ma'am,
It's a linseed oil product.
there's a material list here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, on that table, it's 5 pages long, and that's on all in. Okay. Yes. All the oil primers are made to put either one on. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that question, sir? The question that was asked?
The question was, if you prime with oil primer, can you put an acrylic paint back on top of it? And yes, you can. Most of us do. What we try to avoid with paint are sticky, gooey paints, because they'll stick to windows. We try to buy top coats that dry hard. Those would be non-blocking paints is what they're called. My favorite one is Sherwin-Williams Emerald Urethane Trim Enamel. That's my favorite. Window and door. Okay. Acrylic paint. I like oil. I love oil top coats, but if you hire me, I'm not going to put an oil top coat on, because you're going to sell a house and the next person's not, and it's going to create a compatibility problem probably. So I want to avoid that. Unless you're 38 years old and you go, I'm going to die in this house. Okay, then I will do it for you. Okay? Yeah.
Excuse me, could you either hand him a mic or repeat the question?
Oh,
so
I was
that-
at a seminar recently, and they were selling a product, came in 2 tubes and a popcorn kind of thing. What they wanted us to do was to chisel out the rock, squirt this in there.
We know that
and
product.
tool it.
Yeah, that
Any thoughts on that?
it's in the
This
epoxy.
whole thing is 1920.
That John Stahl sells it.
Fix.
There's 2 brands, and it's an epoxy. Their claim to fame is that it doesn't dry too hard, and so that it flexes with wood movement. Okay. Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. It takes a long time to be intuitive about when you should use a wood Dutchman repair and when you should use epoxy. Okay. Yeah, they say it's wonderful because it dries soft, and therefore it will move with the wood and the contraction. My problem with that is then you can't sand it. It just won't sand smooth, so, like some of the other epoxies.
I tend to always use a wood Dutchman usually.
Yes.
These old windows, those, I don't know what you call them, those connecting things, the panes going, the skinny ones in the middle.
Muntins.
Thank you. I needed a bunch of those, and I went over to
Muntins.
There we go. And over at Curtis, they had a duplicator.
Curtis. You have Curtis windows?
No, Curtis Lumber.
Oh.
They were able to reproduce that.
Yes.
Any other thoughts on that? You can't make it yourself, right? Or maybe you
Now without tools, nothing.
Okay. Millwork places specialize in historic preservation will make it for you, but there's a good chance if you take yours in that their profile is not going to be the same. They may have your profile. They may, okay? But if they don't, they'll have to make the blade. And that, you have to pay for the blade, the mill worker keeps it. Okay? That's just the way it works.
What about wood hardening, like in-wax wood hardening?
In-wax wood hardener will work inside, it will not work, it will fail outside. I realize they give you a hardener for the mushy wood around it, and it's Bondo. It's Bondo with the wood color. That's all it is, and Bondo will fail. It's polyester. It's a polyester film. Okay?
But it's the liquid. You paint it out.
Yeah, that. Wait, now, you know what he's talking about?
So I have used in-wax wood hardener, but not for windows. I've used it to paint the end grain of wood before I install it, before I paint it, to kind of seal the end grain off.
It's lacquer. I spent my whole life painting all over the United States. The wood hardener is lacquer, so.
But I don't use it for windows, ever. It's not a very good window product.
Yeah.
Last one, once you buy the hardware store, big, how many you want, and then you use all that car.
These questions, glass points. So we've got to replace a window, and it says the points at the hardware store are too big. Yeah, they are. Okay? We cut them off with aviator tin snips. Well, first of all, we don't do that. We use a gun, okay? And then we hammer them in with a special hammer. But if you buy the ones at the hardware store, we take aviator tin snips and we cut them short. Have to do that.
It's too deep.
They stick out in the sight line, so when you're looking from the inside out, you'll see that the end of it looking through. And then even if you don't see it, they'll interfere with your putty bead. So that's why we do that. So there's two kinds. There's the triangle, which I don't recommend you use because triangle ones, I break glass with triangles. And then there's the push point. And the push point's all, for an old one, is always too big, so we just trim the end off.
Now I only use triangle points, and I never use a gun, because when I use a
You
gun,
don't use a gun, I got lots of guns.
I break glass with a gun.
Yeah.
So I push for the triangle point, and I buy them on Amazon.
Wanted to do it all yourself. Can you learn this on YouTube?
Can you learn it on you? Well, you know, yeah, but I gotta say, people come to my seminars to get you have the same experience. They come to my seminars to teach glazing. They say, I can't get the hang of it. And in 5 minutes after showing them, grabbing their hand and saying, you're not pushing hard enough, or the putty knife is not smooth enough, or the putty you're using is low quality, they get it. So I've grown up my whole life hearing people tell me, you can learn anything out of a book. And I'm trying not to be profane. No, I don't believe that. Some people like me have to be shown. If you show me once, I got it.
There's also a lot of bad information on YouTube with doing bad work with windows. So you have to really kind of think through it.
Yeah. We should discuss storm windows a little bit. Okay. 3 kind of storm windows. And one's not really a storm window. Okay. There's old-fashioned wooden storm window. There's aluminum storm windows. That's a problem right now. We'll talk about that. And then there's interior storm windows. We're really not a storm window because they're inside. Okay. Any of you have any questions about those? Give her that.
I'm completely new to this because I came from California, so the building I have is what is, let's say, aluminium.
Aluminium. Are you from England? Okay. And garage.
They just started falling apart. They didn't do anything. My building's
Aluminum.
from 1837.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, it's hard to hear.
She said she had aluminum storm windows falling apart that weren't doing anything. I can, in this climate, you need a storm window. Now, I did some work at Cornell 12 years ago for gifted students over there who had their own dorm, private dorm. And the complaint to me was, all these students come from California or other warm climates, and they tell me they're freezing to death, and they haven't pulled their storm sashes in. My solution to that was put a little card in each room that says, pull your storm sash down in there. Okay.
My big complaint is painters and weed holes.
Yeah, the weed holes. Okay. Let's talk about this for a minute. Your original storm window, the ones we like the most, were a wooden storm window. And with that terrible chore of switching storm window and the screens twice a year, okay? And I'm going to talk about a solution to that. And still have a good-looking wooden storm. Yeah, aluminum storms were ugly. They came in about 1948, and guess what? There are companies that make beautiful aluminum storm windows. They look just like a wooden storm window, but they cost a lot. One of the problems with aluminum storm windows today is that during COVID, there was an aluminum shortage, and Larson and Provia, who both sold a moderately priced storm window all over the United States, went out, they quit making them, okay? So your choices are fewer than they were. We like wooden storm windows, but we certainly understand why no one would want to do the switcheroo. So, hang on. I'll try to talk louder. Okay, thank you. What seems to be popular now is people will have a wooden storm frame made. Okay, the upper light, that's the upper pane of glass, is fixed just like an old wooden storm. But the lower one has a screen panel and a storm panel that can be removed from the inside. Okay, people are doing this all over the country. Here's kind of an example of that. Okay, works kind of like that. It's a screen panel. Storm panel would be the same way. There's a whole lot of ways to do this. They can be indistinguishable from an old storm window. Not cheap. They're a premium product, but with the loss of aluminum storms, we're seeing more and more people go this direction.
They're actually pretty comparable pricing now to the more other aluminum windows we currently still have in the market. They're almost the same price as they have like for a modern.
Yeah, they are. So there's different people around New York State that will make those few, or there are some national vendors like Adams Architectural and Spencer Works. They sell those all over the United States. So that's called a combination storm window, and it's not a new thing. You can buy those from Montgomery Ward, Sears, Spiegel, all those sort of catalog places through the up until the middle of the 20th century. Okay. The third storm, which is really an energy panel, is an interior storm. Okay. And interior storms are especially good for those people who have steel windows, because steel windows are a problem in the cold climate. Okay. Anybody have interior storms? The problem with interior storms is that you need to monitor them throughout the year to make sure there's not condensation trapped between the prime window and the interior storm. Because I did some 200-year-old windows a few years ago that had very tight interior storms, and they had like a greenhouse in between them, and it rotted the prime windows. So you got to watch out for that.
Another benefit to exterior storm windows is an exterior storm will actually protect your actual primary sash, and an interior window will not protect it. So having an exterior storm window, it'll cut down the length of time you have to spend, in between all the maintenance cycles. So your paint and glazing will not fail as quickly.
That's right. Yeah. A wooden storm window will not only protect the window and give you better energy efficiency, but you can also put low-E glass in the storm window, which is a controversial topic. Low-E is especially nice in the south when you have sun exposure and your room overheats. Up here, when people all try to sell it to you when you may or may not need it, okay? Any of you know about low-E glass? If you're a homeowner who gets up in the morning and you open up the curtains or the shades or whatever on your sunny exposures to let in passive solar energy on the cold winter days, the low-E glass may not benefit you. And then when you come home in the evening, you pull the curtains or shades or whatever to keep that energy that came in inside as long as possible. If you're not one of those, low-E may benefit you. The other thing about low-E, and it's complicated, maybe it's not worth the cost to agonize over it, but low-E can be beneficial or not beneficial according to the exposure on your house, whether it's in the shade or on the north side or the south side, all that kind of thing. It's actually a complicated topic. Okay.
One of my biggest problems is condensation. In the winter, I don't know where it comes from. Outside.
So this gentleman says he has condensation in the winter and he doesn't know how to stop it. You have storm windows, okay, and what's under your house? You have a crawl space or basement?
Basement.
Concrete floor?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it wet and spring? Not wet. Okay. Using a humidifier on the front? No.
Nice sandy, drained soil.
Okay. I don't know. When we teach new people, one of the things we tell them is don't you ever go in anyone's house and tell them you can solve their condensation problem, because you'll be made a fool out of. Questions? Where are we?
It's
6:30.
Wow.
We usually do this about 8 hours.
Or several days.
For several days. Hands-on. You should bring us back to do a hands-on. Yes.
So I use weather stripping, and so weather stripping is a very good product, and it's good for windows, and it's very beneficial. I'm a purist, and so I always do things the way they were intended to be. I don't really want to change or alter the window. And a lot of the weather strippings, in order to install them, you have to cut kerf lines, so you have to cut a saw blade width into the original window. I don't want to do that.
I have no problem with it. So, but let's go back. He's working on windows a lot older than I'm usually working on something from 1890 to 1930. I could care less. People want them to warm up their house, so yes.
So we talked 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and then just a couple minutes ago, about the fact that part of our house got about, I don't know, there were like 10 sashes that had sash tapes, right? I don't know the prevalence of that in the area, or how they got to the house. The rest of the house is all pulleys and cord, but the sash tapes were a problem with ultimately.
So let me talk about sash tapes. If you were to visit the old patent records, which is like a hobby of mine, there were hundreds and maybe thousands of patents to create a better mousetrap. and that was something other than a rolling pulley window, okay? So I didn't bring a sash tape, but a sash tape looks exactly like a carpenter's measuring tape, okay? And where the pulley is on a rolling pulley window, there's a clock spring balance that goes in there, okay? That was invented in Rochester in 1885, and Pullman is still making them in Rochester, using the same equipment they used in 1885, okay? And they have a good business. I know the owner's a member of the Rochester Country Club, and I think it costs $150,000 to walk in that door. Okay, so he must sell a lot of them. There's another balance. Kurt and I were sneering about this earlier. This is called a spiral balance. This is a Caldwell. These were popular from the 1930s up until the 60s. They work. They're ugly, but they work. They were replaced by the block and tackle balance, which has been used for many decades now. The problem with that is I passed the cords around. I passed those cords around for you to look at. Well, look what you have in the block and tackle balance, okay? That little nylon cord in there, it's going to break. So, yes, you can buy them all day long. What? Did you say 1840 earlier? Well, there's a good chance your house didn't have any balance system. Well, they put a stick on it, or a little toggle. Pins, sash pins. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Sash pins.
I have it all opened up.
I can talk about that. Any of you on boats? Do you know the saying about a boat? What is a boat? God, you're a great crowd. Okay, a boat is a hole in the water where all your money goes, okay? A window is a hole in the wall where all your money goes. But we have to have it. We want to look out and see the flowers in the daylight, we want fresh air, ventilation, okay? We want to scream at the kids or snoop on the neighbors. We want our windows, despite the fact that they're a hole in the wall where the money goes. Okay, I want you to think about this. Let's assume you live in an old house and you had cellulose sprayed in the wall. Okay? What are we going to have? We're going to have an R13 maybe? Maybe. Let's say we got an R13. Let's put a brand new window in. Get rid of that heat up all the window. Triple glazed or whatever. And we're going to get an R3. Okay? An R3. So, what have you really benefited by filling the weight cavity full of insulation? Now, I realize that if you've got air blowing in around the casings and over the pool, then you might have a problem that you need to take care of. And actually, I've done what you're talking about. In houses that were gutted, I've rendered the upper sash unusable, and I have pushed in 1.5 inches of foam insulation. I've taken low expansion foam and gone around the edges, okay? But do I think it helped? I doubt it. But it is a good idea if you have air infiltration, you need to stop that.
The foam in the weight cavity also cuts down the sound.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I've also done it without rendering the upper sash unusable. I've also put 1/2 inch in there, and the upper weight still move up and down. Go ahead.
we're happy to continue to have take a few more questions, but we're trying to keep this to about an hour and 15 minutes. As they said, they're willing to keep going. I just think there's some things that I like to always head home with windows is like we said, they can last for another 100 years. I've been the executive director of the foundation for 16 years. I have seen people come before the design review board to replace replacement windows. So, and those replacement windows are not cheap, and they don't provide the energy savings that they claim. And you're better off on your rate of return on investment on other aspects of insulation. So just hitting that home. Otherwise, it's life cycle of the window and the energy, the embodied energy that goes into these windows.
We didn't talk about that.
You didn't talk about that.
You didn't talk about that.
I think you're probably better to talk about it than me. So I'm going to hand it back to you because I think it's a good thing to talk about.
You know, I'm an old guy, so I have to learn these new things. Embodied energy. Right? Ooh. So we talk about historic preservation being the greenest thing of all because instead of using our energy resources to produce new materials and especially petroleum materials and wood and whatever. You know, our old house, it's already there. And you know, if you compare the resources you use in a new house to what it would cost to rehab an old house, there's just an incredible savings. So embodied energy is that energy, whether it's muscle power, cutting a tree down, milling the wood, hammering it all together, it's saved as opposed to starting all over again. And we can talk about the paint and the roofing and the wood and the foundation and the bricks and the plaster. I mean, it's just goes all the way through the house. It's very important. It's a great topic too.
So there's embodied energy. There's also sustainability. You replace all your windows, where do they go? A landfill. There's nothing good about putting all of this great old growth wood into a landfill. And then you're going to buy a product that's manufactured far away in some big factory that has to be trucked from far away, and then you have to have it installed. So that there's all of that energy and all of that sustainability that's part of this. And people ignore all of that. Like, I want my energy efficiency of my window. That's going to save me, what, $1 a month? What is that doing to our environment? What is that doing to our sustainability? So, like, it's a bigger picture. It's a bigger thing. People think, again, oh, I can lift my windows up. Well, if you repair your window, you can lift your window up pretty easily. Not only that, you can repair it. I lived in an apartment here in Saratoga Springs where they had replaced all the windows with vinyl. Guess what? They gassed up, they started not to stay up, and they probably weren't even 15 years old. Not worth it. And you'd have to replace the whole unit. Was my landlord ever going to replace a whole unit so I could open my window? Probably not. Well, I knew he wouldn't. That's a different topic, but I had sheetrock. You know, so there's that, but you can, over time, you don't have to replace all your windows, you don't have to repair all your windows all at the same time. It is so rare that every window in your house is in such poor condition that they all need to be repaired at the same time. You could do 2 windows a year and just slowly go through it. And you're going to save time and money in the long run. And I've done it. I've taken out a window. If I can do it, and I am not crafty or handy, but if I can reglaze a window and put in a new sash cord, I bet most of you could here. So it's just about time and taking the time and then methodically approaching it. You don't need to repair all of your windows all at the same time. You can do it over time. And I think that's where it becomes daunting. So I guess those are just some of my takeaways when people talk to me about replacing windows, I want my replacement window, you know, you're not gonna get the savings, and you're not gonna get such a pretty window. I mean, it just changes the whole look of a building, and they really are the most character-defining features of the building. So if people want to stay and ask a few more questions, you're happy to stay. I'm sure they'll answer a few more questions for a little bit longer. But I thank all of you for coming. This was a far bigger turnout than I thought we would get, and so I appreciate that. And I try and stay cool, I guess, is what we need to take away.
Okay. Thank you. I brought... If you have some of my pieces and parts, I think there's still bring them up. And then I brought some books that I'll be selling if you're interested in them. So, all right.